We often say that we will not stop until we reach the top. To the young girl listening, to the young woman watching this video, have you ever stopped in your tracks and asked yourself, what if the top is here? Will you stop? Success is not final, failure is not fatal, but continuity matters. What does it take a great woman to walk away from her top career into building a table for herself? This is the power of continuity at work. So, what is your own way of redefining success? Welcome back to another episode of the Speak With Her podcast. My name is Olawosebiko Miriam. You can call me Miro the Circa, and I am excited to be on today's episode titled Redefining Success from Provost to Building Our Own Table. Is this your first time in? This is a space where we invite women from diverse fields and professions to inspire, empower, and educate the next generation, especially young girls who aspire to make a difference in today's world. Joining me as always is my amazing co-host.
My name is Onayemi Oluwafe. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining in. And in the studio today, we have a truly exceptional guest speaker, a woman of great depth, transformation, and remarkable success. She's here to share her insights on how she redefined success, navigated transition, and created her own path. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming the incredible Ma'am Rebecca Yates. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, ma'am.
Thank you for that very generous introduction. It's not necessarily how I see myself, but it's very generous of you to introduce me with such kind and generous words.
Thanks for joining in, ma, and we are expecting to learning from you. So before we dive into the conversation, ma, for the audience that are just seeing you for the first time, ma, can you briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. My name is Rebecca Yates. I think there's probably going to be a little bit of a time delay on this because I'm in Manchester in England, which is in the north of England. My background is I started life as my profession was a lawyer. My journey into law was an unusual one. So I worked full-time in a law firm and studied part-time, and I qualified as a criminal defence solicitor in that way. I then moved into higher education in 2006, and I've had a variety of roles. So I was a law lecturer. I took up every opportunity that came my way. I became head of a law school, head of 3 different law schools. I became a director of in an operational role, which is a director of resourcing, student success, and then also international student outcomes. So that's students who are coming to the UK to study. And then I moved to become a dean. Then I was deputy provost, and then eventually I was provost. That was a role that was that role came to an end. So I joined that particular organisation to solve a particular problem, actually, or create a solution. And that problem came to an end. It was fixed. So I moved on. And that's me. So I've very recently started up my own consultancy. And ultimately, my role of provost came to an end. And I reflected and really felt that I'd spent sort of the past 6 years creating solutions. So there'd be different issues, organisational, institutional issues, and I would be sort of spearheading, getting to the root of what was going on and creating solutions. And I really enjoyed the challenge of doing that. And so it felt like a natural step to start doing consultancy work. So I've been doing that for a few months. And one thing about consultancy work, when you're doing it on your own, it's a bit lonely. And I'm used to having a big team, being part of a team, sort of being in that leadership role. And so I've been very fortunate to work with some fantastic people So there are two women that I worked with recently, and we are launching our own consultancy, working together. So that's sort of bringing together senior women who are excellent to come and work together and really sort of forge our own path.
Thank you. So that is a great transition. That was very, very deep and inspiring. Thanks for the introduction, Ma. Ma, from what you said, you started from being a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Ma, can you take us through moments where you felt like and you realized that law wasn't the final destination? And what did it take you to make that first leap?
Okay, so I started studying law when I was about 21, and I was working full time in a law firm at the same time. It took me a lot of work to get to the point where I became a qualified lawyer, and I loved that job. I really enjoyed it. I was a criminal defense lawyer, so every day was varied, different, interesting. And I got to the point where partnership was the next step. And I reflected and thought, actually, when you become a partner, what you're more interested in, or could be, what becomes important is also the financial viability. And, you start looking you're looking more at business as opposed to the clients and helping, so there's a different lens to it. And I sort of reflected on what I really enjoyed about being a lawyer, and it was the people. And I enjoyed when we had trainees, so fresh out of law school, coming into the office. I enjoyed supporting them. I enjoyed helping them learn from my mistakes. So I would pass on things that I had, what the lessons I had learned. And so that led me to think, actually, perhaps going into higher education and teaching law is something that would really work for me. So I thought about it for a while. And so the idea of becoming a partner at that stage in my life was not particularly attractive. I was more interested in the people than the pennies, if I can put it that way. And equally, I looked around court, and what I saw one day as I looked around was a lot of middle-aged men looking very miserable and wondering where the next case was coming from. And they were all trying to scrabble to get the next big case. And I just thought, maybe I could do something different and give it a try. And if I don't like it, I've always got my profession to come back to. And again, I still carried on thinking about it. And I remember in particular one evening, it was about 3:00 in the morning, and I was what was called a duty solicitor as well as being in private practice. So it was 3:00 in the morning, and I was driving off to a police station. I can't remember what the particular client had been arrested for. And I could hear my young son crying as I was leaving the house. And it just made me think, now is perhaps the time to do something different. I've been feeling it for a while. And so I decided to go into education. And it wasn't easy, actually, because I was very nervous. And I remember I cancelled the interview once. Then I had a fantastic day at court, really enjoyed it, and thought, I can't cancel the interview again. That would be really rude. So I went along and they offered me the job the same day. And to be honest, once I started teaching, I never looked back. I stayed a consultant in the law firm because they kept saying, Rebecca, you'll get bored. You'll get bored. You'll come back. You'll get bored. And I didn't. And I didn't get bored because I literally seized every opportunity I had. When I was teaching, I loved the students. My colleagues were amazing. It was a really collegiate atmosphere when you go from being in law, which is very competitive. There's competition to get the jobs, there's competition to get the clients. To go from that environment into the higher education, it's a very different space to be in. How I can remember very clearly handing in my notice. There were tears, but I knew I was doing the right thing for me. And I knew it wasn't the end because I was taking a risk, yes, but if it didn't work, then something else will come along. There will be other opportunities to do other things. And that's one of the things that I've sort of taken with me throughout my career. Opportunities that come along, you have to embrace them. And if they, because the challenges are as important as the successes. And in fact, sometimes you learn more from the challenge than the success. Don't get me wrong, going into teaching wasn't easy. There were times when I was thinking, oh gosh, what have I done? What have I done? But I was working with a group of people, and there were a few of us who started together. And so we all really supported each other. And we were able to help each other navigate the landscape of being a practicing lawyer to coming into teaching and the new challenges that presents. So it wasn't easy, but I don't regret a minute of it. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it opened up a whole new raft of opportunities for me.
Thank you so very much for that response, Marv. You actually took a bold step, because from being a criminologist lawyer now into education, transitioning into education. And when you were in this school, you were talking about the moments you actually thought that, yes, I can transition into higher education. You said your 3-year-old child was crying. Why was he crying?
He wasn't, I think he must have been.
What did you?
He was still a baby. He was about a year old. He was still tiny, but he heard me waking up in the night and leaving the house, and it just must have disturbed him. But the move to change from law into higher education, it was a challenge in as much as to go from a job that you've worked for years, and that's a really well-respected profession, and it's being a criminal defense lawyer is interesting, and it's a very different role, and sort of getting mentally in the place where I really wanted to do something different, and it felt like my whole persona was going to be different now. I was changing from one job to another. It was quite a significant shift when you've seen yourself in a particular way, in a particular role for quite some time. Because I was about 35. Yeah, I was about 35 when I started teaching. So yeah, it was a big change for me. But yeah, I had children. My daughter, when I started teaching, was about 5. My son was 6 months to a year or so. So I had, quite young children. Was teaching any easier with a young family? No.
Exactly. Thank you so very much for that. That was a great decision, like transitioning from, because being a criminologist lawyer, you're very, very active at all times. But when it comes to education, when it comes to teaching, there are some moments where you have to calm down, where you have to maintain your composure, where you have to maintain your steez. Like now, I want to ask this question. Can you walk us through a moment? Because when you started into an education line, you were once a teacher, like a lecturer. Then now, where you took the leadership role. Now, can you take us through a moment where you had to lead with composure when everything around you felt uncertain?
Yes, gosh, there's lots of those moments, and one of the things about when you are in a leadership role, whether it's institutional or whatever size team you're managing, as a leader, you have to be composed, because if the captain of the ship starts panicking, then everyone starts bailing and panicking. So you have to really hold it together. I can think of many examples. I can think of a few years ago, actually, and the organisation I was working for, they went through a massive transformational change with a new leadership structure. And so there was sort of that change happening. We called it kind of like nuclear change, because everything went at the same time. So it was new management. There was also one part of the business where there were going to be redundancies. And there were other work streams that were all being developed. So there were sort of 5 streams of work that were all change. Now, I was nominated as part of the senior leadership team, and I was working with the staff. I was sort of the staff-facing person to support them and explain about the changes that were going on. And that was challenging because human beings have a certain reaction to change, and people whose jobs might be at risk, it is a very unpleasant experience for them. People are worried. They can be, not just about their work life, but it's about what's going on at home as well, and how do these changes affect them. And so I stepped back to really make sure I was connecting with people's experience so that I could lead that situation and communicate with genuine, authentic empathy and compassion. At the same time, there's all the organizational changes that are going on, and it's important to remain fair, balanced, and trustworthy. And so when you're leading through change, having a moment to understand other people's perspective and the impact that the changes can have on them, I think is important to being able to understand and manage some of their behaviours. And so for me, that was an example, and it went on for several months, and it was a very interesting opportunity to really reflect and think about what I was going to say, why I was going to say it, and how I was going to say it to people who would be impacted in a way that I wouldn't know everyone in the room and the impact on them, other than it's likely to be a challenge for them. And I had to make sure that I was leading them through that change with as much empathy and compassion as possible, but always still maintaining that very distinct, clear professional line. So that was an example I can think of in particular, and it felt a privilege actually to be the person that was, that the organisation and the staff wanted to be the staff-facing person. That actually felt like a privilege that I was trusted on both sides of the table to be able to bring people together and communicate and share ideas and then take them back to the senior team. So for me, that was a moment. But I think there are often moments for any team, regardless of the size, when as the leader, you have to be able to be both separate but empathetic as well. And I think leading in that way so that you're always fair and impartial is really important to making sure that people also trust you. So that's an example of,
Thank you so very much. That's a very good sign of leadership. You're actually teaching young girls on how you can lead, even the moments you actually, because it's a new environment to you. It's from arresting, it's different from interrogation, now to leading in education line. So it has to do with communicating and working with people's experiences. That was a huge move on you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for that. And you were working on people's experiences, you were working on their uncertainty, on how to make them feel better with your leadership role. So, ma'am, I want to ask you this question. How are you managing the role? How did you manage the role yourself? Like, what do you feel?
In terms of managing the role, I was thinking about this, because sometimes when you're new to a role, in the same way when you learn to be a teacher, you're thinking about yourself a lot. And as you gain confidence, you then start to think out a little bit more, and you see more about what's going on around you. And I think it's the same with a leadership role. When you're new to it, confidence and just trying to understand what you're doing, you can be more, you tend to look a bit more inwards. And as you grow and you learn, you realize that in a leadership role, looking outwards is actually really important, and listening is really important. There are times when it can be very difficult, when it can be challenging, and you have to be composed. You have to be able to find a way to manage and process your own emotions. And over the years, I have to say, I've learned a lot from some very good leaders and also some not so good leaders. And I think managing your own emotions is really important for other people to have confidence in you as well, because, you know, that's what leadership is. Partly the people around you have to be confident and feel safe with you and what you're doing in order for you to take them with them. So what do I do to maintain my composure? Well, I'm naturally quite a calm person. My children might not say that, but, you know, in work, I am generally a calm person. And I think being measured, planning, and understanding people helps enormously. On a personal level, I like to meditate and do yoga. That kind of helps me feel grounded. It also helps me to release tension as well. And also, I often find solutions when I'm having those quiet moments. But I think because of my past, and actually because, you know, my job as a criminal lawyer, you know, you are trained very much to sort of think, find problems, process them, solve them, and be able to communicate them clearly. And that is quite aligned to being able to take on a leadership role where you are personally responsible for other people. And so for me, being in a leadership role is a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy managing people. I really enjoy watching people grow. For me, that's something that I really enjoy. And over the years, there's many fantastic people I've worked with who I've really valued on my team, that I've had to suggest to them that there's another role that would be really good for them. And it might mean them not working with me anymore, but it's another role for their progression. And I enjoy doing that. I like seeing people sort of develop and grow and, you know, have those experiences.
Thank you so very much. You've really shown the paths into good leadership role. So I'll be stopping from here, and my other co-host will be starting.
Okay.
Mr. Naomi, you can start from him.
Yeah, thank you for your questions.
Thank you,
Well,
ma'am.
thank you so much once again. Thank you so much once again for honoring our invite. Thank you so much. Well, when our guest speaker was speaking, I was imagining the sleepless nights that must have come with the journey. Because when Miss Miriam, when she made mention of she should highlight the points where she felt uncertain. In her story, she didn't at any point say that, oh, just because I'm uncertain about this, that means I should give up. She didn't do that. Even when she was uncertain about some things, she was determined, and that's what I want us to imbibe from our guest speaker. It is not every time that you'll be unsure, that you'll be sure about everything. In life, you have to take risk. When Miss Miriam and our guest speaker, when they were introducing herself, and I was looking at the achievement, and then I was amazed, because no achievement comes easily. Yes, nothing good comes easily. No matter nothing, nothing good comes easily. And once again for being a source of inspiration. Because even when I was going through our LinkedIn, yes, ma'am, when I was going through our LinkedIn profile, I was so inspired. Thank you so much, ma'am. Yes,
well,
ma'am.
It came with a lot of hard work. To qualify as a lawyer, I was working full time and studying in the evenings. My friends would be going out to parties and doing all sorts of things. And I'd be like, no, I've got an exam. I've got another exam. And then I also had children during that phase. And I suppose I have to give some kudos to my husband, because he's been very supportive. And he did a lot, he did a lot of support with the childcare, because I think it would have been very difficult to do it without having solid family support. So a lot of late nights, a lot of exams. And And then there are challenges, and there are sacrifices that you have to make to get things done. But I quite like that challenge, I think. It can be difficult. And when things go wrong, you have to sit back and go and think, right, that was a challenge. It didn't go as I expected. What can I learn from it? Why didn't it work? What could I have done differently? And equally, when you have a success, you can sit back and say, right, how did that happen? Because sometimes things work that you don't expect to. You have a major success, but sometimes I think, those successes tend to be a collection of people that have made those successes happen. You don't just do it on your own. Yes, sitting in a room revising and doing exams is a single thing, but someone else has to be doing all the other things to keep your home and your family all moving and all the parts moving. But certainly, when good things happen, when things work, it's usually a collection of people who come together, who've bonded, who've worked really well, who can be creative and bring different skills to the table. So I kind of see those successes as being collaborative exercises, because I couldn't do things on my own. It has to be those people that you bring with you, and that's all of your team. And that's not just in your team, but their team. So it's it's an organization that works, not just a person.
The gift of men. That's why we have to surround ourselves constantly with like-minded people that are hungry for growth. Okay, Ma. So my first question is, you've spent your career in spaces historically dominated by men, and now building your own consultancy. What is one thing you had to unlearn or push back against to hold your ground?
Oh, now you're asking me. I've thought of a couple of examples, actually, because interestingly, a lot of my work in higher education, I've worked with other women. And also there've been male spaces. So here's one thing that I try to remember to do. There can be occasions, and sometimes, as women can be as guilty of this as men, but sometimes there's more men that do it. When you're in a meeting and you express an idea and then someone else repeats it as theirs and kind of takes that. There can be those dynamics in a workplace, which can be, it's where people are being a little bit too competitive and there's no need to be. And I just will sort of bring it back and graciously thank them for their support with that idea or that piece of work that's going to go forward. But then generally I'll try and get them involved. But I think push back on, I'm hoping this doesn't happen anymore. But when I was a younger woman working in law, which was quite a male-dominated space, there were a number of instances that would not be tolerated in the workplace nowadays, just would not be tolerated. And those situations were quite difficult to deal with, because as a young woman in your 20s, it's quite hard to push back when somebody has said something that is inappropriate, lurid comments, and you can feel very nervous, and it can be difficult. As you get older, you'll speak up much more easily, but when you're younger, it can be quite difficult. And the way in which I dealt with that, and it happened on several occasions. I had to think about how I was going to deal with it. I didn't want to call the person out in front of other people. Perhaps I should have done, but I felt that would escalate things. And so what I did was, after the event, I spoke with a particular individual and explained to them that their comments were inappropriate, how they made me feel, and that it was not to be tolerated and shouldn't happen again. Otherwise, I'd make a formal complaint. Now, the workplace was very different then. And I'm hoping that those sorts of things don't happen now. Or if they do, that women feel more comfortable just calling it out as it is and setting the record straight. But it is awkward. It's difficult. And I'm hoping that doesn't happen. Other situations, I've been in the police station. Oh gosh, police stations, male dominated. Most of my clients were male. Most of the police officers were male. It could be a very tense environment. And the way I dealt with that was actually to depersonalize it and not see it as me and think, well, actually, these people, these officers investigating these crimes would behave in exactly the same way if it's a man. They might be a bit more friendly or what have you, but I tried to depersonalize it and think about it, go, okay, well, they're doing a job. Their job is to create an atmosphere that is difficult for the lawyer and is difficult for the client because they have different objectives that they want to achieve. And so I tried to depersonalize it and just kind of step outside of it and not let it feel as though it was being hostile to me personally, but it's just a hostile environment that can be quite difficult and challenging. So yeah, depersonalize, deal with situations in a way that feels comfortable for you. If you've got somebody who is behaving in a way that is inappropriate, don't ignore it, but deal with it in a way that is best for you. But those nowadays, as an older lady, I don't. There are situations. I was thinking, last week I was in a meeting. I was the only woman in the room. As you gain confidence, it becomes potentially less and less of an issue in a way. But yeah, there are times when you do have to sort of stand your ground and be firm. And I think that comes with practice. There are times in the past where I've just been the meek person in the room and I've gone out and gone, oh gosh, why didn't I say something? And why did I let that happen? So then you learn ways to stop that happening and ways to to make yourself speak up. And it can be a challenge. But sometimes it's your own piece of personal development. I had one line manager many years ago, and she was absolutely fabulous. And she forced me to do things that I didn't want to do. And that actually gave me a lot of confidence. So one of the things she forced me to do, which helped me understand that sometimes a situation is less about the other person and more about me. She made me do networking. Now, networking isn't my natural space. Or I didn't think it was. I was like, oh, I really don't want to do it. So I would go to these events. I would arrive at the very last minute I possibly could get away with. I would leave as quickly as I could. And one day I left an office and I was outside on the road and I was like, why did I bother going to that? Because I didn't network. So I went back in, went back up in the lift, went back in the room and started speaking to people. And I realized why my boss was making me do it, because once I did it, it was like, okay, this isn't that bad. And everybody feels similar. And I don't really have anything to be afraid of here. And so I think the pushback becomes easier the more you realize that you actually have the resources within you to make yourself do things and say things that, to be in situations you wouldn't necessarily want to be in. And once you know you can do that, when you're in a situation that makes you feel uncomfortable, you learn ways of managing.
Well, thank you so much for that. She made mention of networking and how she said she initially wasn't really comfortable with it. Well, as for me, and I'm just going to be factual, I'm still having issues with networking, despite the fact that I know that it is very important in growth, because there are certain places that money cannot take you to, but it is with the connection you have, the people you've spoken with, that can take you to those places. And And I think one of the issues that makes people, I'm talking from my experience also from networking, is this sort of, before you approach a person, at times it doesn't happen every time, but at times before I approach someone, I will have thought of 1,000 things that the person would say. Maybe the person will be like, oh, who is this one, or who is this? So, and then, so we should not allow those thoughts to limit us. We should endeavor to network, to mix with people, because it is very important in our growth journey. Then she made mention of one time that she was not comfortable with some comments that someone made. If she was timid, or probably she had lost her voice, or probably she had lost her voice rather, she would have just decided that, oh, let me just keep it to myself. But she, with wisdom, she was able to manage the situation. Yes, and also she made mention of the fact that if you don't feel comfortable in a particular place, okay, maybe as a lady, as she said, when she mixed with the policemen, she said it was hostile. So if you're not comfortable with something, you can set the tone of the room. If you walk into a room and everything feels hostile and you're not comfortable, there are things you can do to make yourself comfortable. They don't have to determine how you should feel. So just because they are behaving in a way you don't like, or in a way you're not comfortable with, that doesn't mean you should just accept it. You should try to make it. They say whenever life gives you lemon, you can make lemonade out of it. So that's what I have to say. Thank you again very much, Ma. Thank you. Another question is, every leadership journey comes with it's the quiet side and the other side, the times where you feel like, oh, I think I've made a mistake, or the times where it feels like, this is not for me. So, Ma, what did it cost you personally, and what made it worth it?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question. I think the cost is sometimes that you, as a leader, you are part of a team, but you also have to be a little distant at the same time. You have to be a couple of steps away to make sure that you are completely impartial, that you are fair and just to everybody. And so there are times when it can be, I wouldn't say lonely, but you're part of the crowd, but you're not at the same time. And I think there's a personal cost. I can't really think of any other than sometimes you think about everything that's going on and the impact it's having on the people in your team, and you want people to flourish and be okay, but there are always really difficult times when you know that people that you are working with are struggling, and there are times when you can't fix that. So you can acknowledge it, you can be supportive, but you can't necessarily make that problem go away. That can be quite challenging personally, because you do take things home with you, and you do think about them and wonder how can I make this better. So sometimes that can be difficult, knowing there's a situation you actually cannot fix and that is difficult, and it just has to be. That's the hard bit, actually, that other things that you can navigate are fine, but when you're left sitting with a situation that is difficult and you can't do anything about it, that can be quite a challenge on a personal level, because it does create your own personal emotional baggage that you need to be able to deal with. And as I said earlier, I try and meditate. I do a lot of reflection and thinking through things. But there are those situations that are beyond your control. All you can do is make sure that the people you're working with know that you understand the situation and that you are as supportive as you can be.
Okay.
But yeah, as a leader, sometimes, and even if you're in a situation that is really frustrating for you personally, you can't always show it. You still have to be authentic, but there's still a line that you don't cross. And that can be difficult. It can be very difficult when you have to step back and see something happening that happening somewhere over here that is going to be a car crash, and you can't stop it because it's something that's beyond your control. That can be very challenging, especially when, like me, you're used to sorting out problems. There's a problem happening over somewhere else that isn't quite my responsibility, or maybe not something that I'm involved in, and I can see it's a problem, but I have to let it run its course. That can be very challenging.
Okay, so she made mention of something. While she was speaking, I thought of something, because that is like the summary. I see it as the summary of what she was trying to say, which is emotional management. She made mention of the fact that there are times that, okay, she felt frustrated because she knows that there is a situation that she can't solve, but then she had to still show support. If the leader is lacking in emotional management, times when the leader feels frustrated, the person can actually crash out, and then it becomes so obvious to the people that are looking up to the individual. It becomes so obvious, because once the leader crashes out and it's just all over the place, you're confused, confusion is written all over, it passes down to the followers, those that are looking up to you, which can lead to a lot of issues. So as a leader, you have to learn emotional management. So at this point, I would like to hand over to my co-host, Miss Ellie.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for the time that you have dedicated to be on this podcast with us. We have been so blessed, and I believe that many other women, ladies that would be listening to this podcast would also have at least a thing or two to take home. So thank you so much. All right, so I'll just continue from where she stopped, and I'll be asking this question. And this question says that, okay, when we are talking about reinvention and reclaiming the table, we know that you didn't stop just at the top. You built your own table with your consultancy. Because we know that a lot of people say, oh, we aim for the top. But we know that when you get to the top, learning from people like you, your life journey, and other people that have walked this path, there's still something else. So we keep aiming higher. So knowing how you have walked, built your own table, and, with your consultancy, what pushed you to walk away from institutional leadership and start something that is entirely yours, instead of just saying, oh, this is how would I explain it now, institutional leadership, staying there and seeing how things will unfold? But what made you take a step aside and do your own thing?
Where I was working, it was always going to be I went there for a particular issue, and when that particular issue was concluded, for me, that was clearly the point at which I wasn't going to stay. So did I want to go into a very senior role in another institution? I've reflected on what I enjoy doing. And it felt like the right opportunity to explore doing consultancy work. And it's fairly new to me. I've been doing this for a few months now, working with some great colleagues, working with other universities. So for me, actually, it's also very much a way of learning as well. I see consultancy as a great way of learning new skills, new relationships, building new relationships all the time, which is what makes it so very, very interesting. And also seeing how other universities and institutions and different, higher education providers operate is incredibly insightful. And so it means the knowledge base just keeps growing. And I've been doing some work very recently with a university that's been really interesting, and it's involved me doing research of across a whole selection of universities and what they do and how they do it. And so I find the work very interesting and challenging. And for me, it's not about status. I have to be able to spend my time doing things that I genuinely enjoy and feel that I'm benefiting from it and that I'm doing something that adds value. And so for me to move to consultancy at this point in time just felt like something interesting that I wanted to explore, to continue on that learning journey.
Amazing. So this is just a side one. So saying that you wanted to continue learning and doing all of this, would we say that if you had stayed back, you might not have been able to have other expressions to do other things that you wanted to do, or there will be nothing more to learn?
Oh, there would be things to learn, but it would be within a particular environment. And what I wanted to do was broaden my experience. And certainly the insights I've been getting from different universities and providers is insightful. It's interesting. I could still go into, I didn't want to just jump from one role straight into a very similar role at another university without first having a broader experience, if you like. And moving into consultancy gave me a bit more control over what I was doing. Also, I'm working with two fantastic women that I've worked with over the recent years. And it just felt like a good opportunity to do something a little bit different. And in the same way that I stepped out of law and into education, I don't feel as though it's necessarily the end road. It's sort of the beginning of something different. So for me, that's why I sort of moved into it. I just thought it would be interesting, and the opportunities came up. This is my first weekend off for about 2 months. So the opportunities just seemed to happen at the right time. Yeah. So an opportunity came up, and it was kind of, yeah, okay, I'll give that, I'll do that. And then something else came up, and then something else. So it just seems to have been the right time for me to branch into doing this. And I'm going to sort of go with that experience and see where it takes me.
It's definitely going places, going to great places. It's going to take you to bigger platforms. My God, Grace. All right. The last question I have here is it's for the girl watching, the woman or the lady that's watching. If a young girl watching this episode is dreaming of a seat rather at a table that doesn't yet have room for her, what is one thing you would want her to know before she starts carving that path, so she wouldn't get discouraged, or rather when challenges come, she would be able to remember, fall back on, or something for her to run with?
Yeah, I like the way you phrased that she's forging her way at a table, because I've over the years, I've had jobs that weren't jobs before I started doing them. And then I sort of created my own role, if you like. So my advice to a young, ambitious woman would be to remain focused, but be flexible. To be confident, but also remember humility as well. And to seize every opportunity that comes your way. A lot of young women who are very ambitious and hardworking are also perfectionists and think that everything has to be absolutely perfect before you can move on or apply for that job. And you look at the job and I can do that, but I can't do that bit. And they don't apply. Or they sort of find excuses because they don't feel perfect enough. Don't sacrifice momentum for perfection. So if an opportunity comes, I would say it's an opportunity to learn and grow. You don't have to be perfect going into it. And there isn't any such thing as being perfect in a job. Every job you ever do, there'll be things that could have gone better. There will be those, those bumps along the way. That's part of understanding yourself and how you develop. So I would say the challenges are as important of those moments of success where you feel you've achieved something. The challenges are where you learn about yourself. And so push yourself. If opportunities present themselves, take it. What's the worst thing that can happen? Things that go wrong usually provide you with or you feel that they're going wrong. It's usually an avenue to something else. So I would say, believe in yourself and don't sacrifice momentum for perfection, I would say.
Amazing. So we've all heard, don't feel that you're not worthy enough, you're not qualified enough. But as we all grow, like the saying goes, we're all work in progress. We're all aiming towards that perfection. So don't push yourself too hard. As a matter of fact, go for it. If you have a space, if you feel that you have an opportunity you can explore, take advantage of it. Learn, encourage yourself to do better, to be the best in whatever it is. Put your best in whatever field that you'll find yourself. But also give yourself grace by knowing that we're not perfect. You don't know it all. You don't have it all. So I know that a lot of women would have been really, really encouraged out there and want to take this opportunity to say thank you so much. We cannot overemphasize how much we're grateful to have you here today. We are grateful. Thank you so much. Right about now, I'll just hand over to Miriam to close this session.
Thank you so very much, Ma, for the time, for your knowledge, for sharing your experiences, and the remarkable, inspiring, successful journey that you've been sharing with us. We really do appreciate it. I feel a young woman that is opportune to listen, to watch this video will definitely be saying thank you a million times. Because the moment I saw this topic from Provost, I was thinking it stopped at being a provost and maybe you've gone through the dean, the director, and the solicitor. But when she corrected me, she was like, she's already building a business consultancy firm. I was wild. I said, oh, does this person exist on Earth? Wow. You're a real gem. You're a real gem to many young girls out there that doesn't even want to push themselves harder because they feel like I'm a young girl, I'm a girl, so I'm very soft. There are some limits that I can go into. There are some, especially leadership role. We see ourselves as being limiting our position. Like I can't take through this leader because it's a kind of male dominated field, so I can't go through. But you conquered, you went and you conquered, and you are even building your own table for yourself. You didn't stop at the top. You actually redefined success in your own way. As a young girl today, as a young woman today that is watching me, I want to put this across to you. Can you really redefine your success in your own way? How can you do it yourself? You saw the way Ma'am Rebecca Yates explained a journey, an inspiring journey. Are you not inspired? Can you not do more? Can you do better? So this episode is truly inspiring. Thank you so very much, Ma, for giving us your time, for sparing your time, and for this opportunity all the way from Manchester, UK. Thank you so very much, Ma.
Thank you, ladies. Lovely to speak to you all.
It was nice speaking with you. The conversation was interesting and we love you,
Yeah.
man. And I'm so proud and I'm excited to tell you that we have a graduate lawyer with us, ma'am. So Ms. Onemi just graduated as a
Oh, really?
lawyer. So I think
Congratulations.
because
Thank you.
yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you, ma'am.
I'm very sure that because she has been busy all this while. She's been telling me she's been having projects work and all of that. But I'm very sad that because she's so a solicitor now into higher education roles and even business calls, so that she will be telling herself that, oh, I must not miss it because I am just into the world. Because being a solicitor, someone would think that, okay, I've done it, I'm on success, I'm on the top and everything. But you showed us that that is not the end. That is where life begins and the transition into something else. And you build a successful path. Thank you so very much, ma. The recorded episode, the recorded podcast will soon be uploaded on the Speak Without Podcast YouTube channel. So if you're watching this, kindly subscribe. You can see more of this. And we need sponsorship, yes. If you want us to continue this podcast, kindly sponsor us. Thanks so very much, ma'am Robert Yates. Thank you so very much. We've
Yeah,
come to
ladies.
the end
Nice
of
to
the
speak to you all. Bye.
it's bye bye.
Bye.